see.
Welcome to the College Football Preview Show presented by Yolked. I'm your host, John Serenitas, and I'm joined as usual by our lead college football writer and one of the best in the biz, our Ryan Barry. Ryan, how are you this evening?
Pretty good. That was very generous, but I'm doing well. You're the guy who knows. You're the guy who knows the backup left tackle from Stonehill. That's the real lead guy. So,
well, look,
yeah.
You know what? I mean, you first of all, you do yeoman's work for us, but you're our UMass guy. You're a UMass guy yourself. But we were talking literally, you probably heard us talking right before we went live. And, of course, big one this week for the Minutemen as they host Missouri. Missouri comes to town. And, we were talking about how obviously to cover a program that is struggling like your alma mater is, like my alma mater really, because it's the football program for all the UMass schools nowadays, it sucks. It sucks because Don Brown's the right guy. It's a good staff. They're working hard. And it just stinks to see them struggle so much. But there is something to be excited about this week that you have an SEC opponent coming to town. Eli Drinkwitz has said all the right things all week, that don't let their record fool you, and they look better on film. And I'm excited to get out there and see the environment. I don't think he knows what he's in for once he gets to work. But nonetheless, it's a big game for this program. And you have to think, if nothing else, they come to play. Now, of course, we're going to preview it later, but you have to think if they'll be motivated to play this game with a national ranked opponent coming to town.
Yeah, it's going to be quite the spectacle. So I'm excited for that. I'm very grateful it's a noon kickoff. I wish there were more noon kickoffs, but so that's, maybe a little bit less time to kind of take in the spectacle, but that is what I'm just trying to have tunnel vision for. I'm not thinking of the record, not thinking.
I wanted to ask you this before. Yeah, I was going to ask you this later, but I'll ask it now. I mean, are you surprised that it's a noon kickoff? I mean, I thought they might play at 3:30 only because of them coming in. Obviously, they'll fly in and be in on Friday. They'll stay overnight. They're not going to fly in the day of the game, obviously. But were you surprised that they didn't play this game at 3:30? I mean, it's Missouri. This is a game that people out there have been pointing to now for 2 years.
Yeah, I'm a little bit, just because, I mean, obviously, I think Missouri is an hour behind in time. So, it's 11 o'clock for them, whereas it's noon for us. So even though that's back home for them watching. So I am a little bit confused in some regard. I think maybe it's because of television, because it's going to be on ESPN too. So maybe they just didn't have any other slots for that, or there's a hell of a slate on Saturday nationally. So maybe you would have gotten buried at 3:30. I don't know, but it is a little surprising just because it is such like a big thing, at least for UMass. But maybe nationally they're like, well, the SEC network.
Well, it's a big deal that it's on ESPN too. I mean, it's going to give the program some much needed exposure, and I think that's important. That helps in recruiting. That helps in marketing and selling the program in the athletic department. So I do think that from that standpoint, it's a pretty big deal. I think it's a big deal that they're playing that game in that time slot. So we'll see. We'll preview it here in a little bit, but we're going to just quickly take a whirl around Division I New England college football here and talk a little bit about the weekend that was. And I covered the Brown-Bryant game, and I got to tell you, that's one of the best games I've covered since the inception of this website. It was fun, a lot of fun. Bryant ended up winning 42-35 in a shootout. Disappointing loss for Brown, especially because they're playing for the Governor's Cup this week against rival URI. But it was a great game. And the star of the show was Bryant wide receiver Landon Ruggieri, 10 catches, 190 yards, 3 touchdowns. Huge win for a Bryant program that had been struggling going into this game. And I thought Chris Merritt after the game made a pretty good point in that. He said, look, I kind of felt that things were starting to turn around for us a little bit in the second half of that UNH game. Then they had the bye, so they had 2 weeks to prepare for him. But for me, Ryan, when I looked at this game, as I ran it back in my mind, I said this after the Harvard win for Brown. I said they can't relive this game next week. They got to get past it starting tomorrow. Kind of felt early on they didn't get past it. They got off to a little bit of a slow start. Bryant scored first. When you're a young program, that'll happen. But nonetheless, a big win for Bryant. Bryant needed this one. It's the 9th meeting all time. They're 3-6 now all time against Brown, but a big win for Chris Merritt's team.
Yeah, you almost have to wonder if it's the fact that Bryant's kind of had the gears turning a little bit more, with the fifth game in as opposed to the third for Brown. I'm not sure. I mean, I know there's the Harvard hangover, but the ability for Bryant to close and score 22 points in the fourth quarter, like, shows to me like that's a team that's been like they've been working, they've been building, that there's something that has been progressing every week, and that's something where it feels a little bit more complete than maybe where Brown was, right? Like you said too, especially getting off to a slow start. I mean, Brown's still kind of struggling to be consistent in the run game. But I mean, two awesome quarterback performances. I was jealous when I saw this scoreline and went back and watched these highlights. I mean, just an incredible game. And it's just awesome that obviously football in Rhode Island, just in general too, right? It's not just about the Governor's Cup. You have this game as well. If this gets good, then you're going to have to figure out something to share or split it three ways, or, kind of like the Commander-in-Chief trophy. I don't know, the Commander and Clear Chowder trophy. I don't know, figure it out, but it's exciting. Yeah.
The Peter Griffin Award.
Yeah, right. The Quahog Cup. I don't know. Yeah.
The Quahog Cup. Well, Quahog Cup could actually be a pretty good name for it.
Yeah.
If they play, I mean, there's some rumblings. They signed a 10-year deal initially to play. This is the 9th year of the meeting. They are going to play again next year in Smithfield, but there are some rumblings that, there hasn't been a new agreement between the two schools yet. And I've heard rumblings that, that this might be it next year. It's not official. I don't want to put anything out there that, hasn't officially been announced by either school, but I have heard chatter that they haven't extended yet, and there's a possibility that, that could be up in the air. We'll see when the time comes. In any event, speaking of URI, huge 46-44 double overtime win over Hampton. They looked like they were dead in the water in the third quarter of that game. They come roaring back, win the game, pull it out. Jim Fleming's happy. The Rams are happy. They go into the Governor's Cup matchup on Saturday at home against Brown with some momentum. And all of a sudden, and I said this to our good friend Bill Koch from the Providence Journal when we were sitting in the press box on Saturday. I said, this Hampton game has been typically the game in recent years that URI loses that throws off their momentum, and all of a sudden they're not in the CAA conversation anymore. But now that they won it, and the CAA is still tough. Now, of course, Delaware's arguably the best team in the conference, but they don't qualify to win the conference title because they're moving up to FBS next year. But this is a big win for URI. You get this win now. You've got some momentum. You can bring that momentum into the Governor's Cup game on Saturday. Again, this could be a different URI team than what we've seen the last couple of years where they've been close, but not close enough.
Yeah, at 180 yards from Malik Grant, he just continues to get better. This is kind of what I feel like the Rams have been missing at
What
times.
A transfer pickup he was, by the way.
Yeah, this is what they were missing, right? That they had.
And not to cut you off, Ryan, but
yeah,
Sacred Heart is 3-3, and they're running the ball just as well. They haven't really skipped a beat, which shows you how well they recruit the running back position.
Oh, yeah.
That he can leave and go to URI, have an impact, and they're still running the ball. But continue.
No. It's 100% right. I mean, well, like you said, this is the game that trips them up, and it's the one that, as a fan, you're probably like, well, this is they usually lose this overtime game, right? Especially being away, right? These like you commit 2 turnovers, right, and you struggle coming out the gate, right, and you only score 10 points in the first half, but it's. I don't know. It's if you're a Rams fan and you look at this landscape of the CAA, it's not crazy to think that they can continue doing this now, because this is, like you said, the game that they struggle with, right? And Devin Farrell to come back at the end there it's impressive.
It is. It really is, and I think it's a big win for them, a huge win, and especially because they were able to go on the road and do it. I think ultimately that's what makes it impressive. Speaking of big wins, Harvard last Friday night, beating UNH 28-23 in a great game. Of course, our Kevin Stone was there for that one. Look, after they lost that game to Brown, the way they did, I mean, Harvard should have won that game. Coach Andrew Orridge talked about some game management issues there at the end and how they mismanaged it. They should have won. They didn't. Kudos to Brown. But to bounce back the way they did and beat a very good UNH team who is still in the mix to win the CAA, they're certainly – still among the teams that are going to be in the conversation until we get into October and November here. It's a big win for this Harvard program to bounce back and beat a quality opponent like that.
Yeah, I think what this highlighted more was that Harvard still has a great run defense. They still can shut teams down. I mean, 46 total yards for UNH. I mean, Isaac Seed only 49 yards and just not and that shows why when you're missing another guy and it's only just one person. Seth Morgan threw the ball 47 times, right? I mean, it's when you don't have another back to complement that, it's tough. I mean, Logan Tomlinson continues to be, I think, best, top 3 receivers in all New England. 10 catches, 105 yards, and a touchdown. Just so consistent. And Caleb Burke and Joey Corcoran improving 8 catches each. So it's a great game for UNH as far as the stat line goes, but to not be able to close it out is frustrating, especially, when they had a chance to at different points. But I just think all of the credit to me goes to the Harvard defense for shutting them down in the run game.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's the other part of this is that, UNH is going to spread you out, throw the ball. That's their thing with Seth Morgan and that talented receiver core. But to slow them down enough and then to do a good job controlling the line of scrimmage and not allowing Seed in that running game to get going, I think that was huge there. Yale picks up a 23-22 win over Central Connecticut State. I'm telling you, man, this Central Connecticut State program almost beat UMass. Now they almost beat Yale. I mean, Adam Lechtenberg has got this thing going in the right direction here. They're playing good football, competitive football. They're right there. If they can hit the portal this offseason, they'll ramp up the recruiting. They'll get some better talent in there. This could be a pretty good program. They're back in the NEC. They still have a pretty good shot at winning the NEC. They host Mercyhurst this week, but nonetheless, kudos to the Blue Devils. They played a pretty good game against a Bulldogs team, that was reeling off a big road loss to Cornell. Tony Reno's squad bounces back, but they got their money's worth on Saturday.
Yeah, I think Brady Olson giveth and taketh away with 2 interceptions, right? 288 yards, it's got a cannon, right? Elijah Howard had a great game, but it's just that's the difference is turning the ball over, right? And Yale didn't do that. They kept the ball, and Joshua Pitzenberger had a great game. So those are the small little things, but a 1-point loss is not a moral victory, right? Because especially when you're so close.
A loss is a loss.
Right. But like you said, the fact that it doesn't affect the NEC and you don't need to worry about being ranked. And it's another thing where if you're CCSU, when you get into this more conference play, you have to be like, no, we can do this. This isn't just the maybe next year. We've got a team that can do this.
Yeah, no, I agree. And sticking with the Ivy League, Dartmouth survives against Penn and what was an emotional day on campus. They renamed the football stadium in honor of Buddy Tevens, and that is, I mean, unbelievable. He is a Dartmouth legend. He did a lot for the game, both at Dartmouth and as a whole. So a tremendous honor for Buddy and his family to have the stadium named after him. Well-deserved. His legacy will live on forever there now. And a big win. Big Green of 3-0. They go to Yale this week. Armand Kidway is going to be there for that one. Should be a great matchup. All of a sudden now, you got Yale at 2-1, Dartmouth at 3-0. This is when the Ivy League gets good now. It's starting to get spicy. You got some good matchups coming up here. This Dartmouth team is flying under the radar, though. And you have to think, didn't people learn their lesson last year when they doubted this team? And all of a sudden they come out of left field, Sammy McCorkle, he rallies the wagons, and they play unbelievable football down the stretch and end up getting a share of the Ivy League title. But, I mean, this offense is really good. You got Proctor at quarterback, Hugh Jones at running back, Paxton Scott at wide receiver. I mean, don't sleep on the Big Green. You haven't learned your lesson. You better wake up and realize it now. They're going to be in the hunt all year. They're not going away.
Yeah, and their defense, too. Only 88 rushing yards allowed. And, Aiden Sane was one of the better quarterbacks in the Ivy League, a pretty quiet game. And it's like, I don't know if it's just because of where they're geographically located or what. I don't know. Because like you said, every year it seems that Dartmouth quietly has decent or to great seasons, but it just people are like, oh, yeah, Dartmouth, right? Which stinks. And I will say, right, to the Buddy Tevens point, it was really cool to see a shout out on the Manning cast on Monday Night Football.
Yeah, the Mannings were very close with Buddy.
Yeah, that was cool with them and Archie giving him a shout out. So it's special to see that.
Absolutely. And if my memory serves me correctly, I think Buddy Tevens helped Archie Manning launch the camp. So yeah, I think that he was very instrumental in helping the camp grow to what it is today. UConn picks up a 29-20 win over Temple. I think, look, I've been saying it all along, inject that UConn Kool-Aid in my veins. And I'm on board. I mean, they got a bye week this week, but I'm on board. But man, that was a little too close for comfort there. I mean, I did not think Temple would play them this tough. seeing the way they blew out FAU, they blew out Buffalo. I thought for sure Temple coming in with one win. Yeah, they got a nice passing game. They played tough defense, pretty good against the run, but I didn't see this. I didn't see them going toe-to-toe with UConn needing to pull it out in the end. Nonetheless, they did. They improved to 4-2, and this team is virtually unbeatable at the rent, man. I mean, they have been really good at home under Jim Mora. They keep the good times rolling. 4-2 now, 2 wins away from being bowl eligible.
Yeah, I think the issue is not an issue, but what scares you if you're a UConn fan is just Joe Fagnano turned the ball over 3 times, right? Like he's got to be better with ball security, right? Only, 99 rushing yards this week, after exploding the week before.
Right. But again, that Temple defense is fantastic up front, despite their record. But,
right.
I'm glad you brought that up, Ryan, because to me, with that offensive line, I don't care how good they are on defense, they should have run the ball better than that.
Right. Yeah, so it's tough with that. And of course, there was the exciting play at the end when, UConn gets the kick, or was it the extra point?
The guy called it, yeah.
Yeah, and I felt a little vindicated with that as a UMass fan because that's how UMass lost to Temple in 2015 on a crazy thing like that. Kind of similarly, it was nice to see the shoot on the other foot. But yeah, another impressive week. I think it's, unlike UNH, we were saying a couple weeks ago where it's too bad they had a bye week. It's a perfect time for a bye week for UConn because they need to get healthy to really finish out this season strong and get full eligible.
Yeah, they got Wake Forest coming to town on the 19th. That's not going to be an easy game. You're going to be there for that one.
Oh, yeah.
It will not be an easy game for them. And Wake Forest is down, but it's Dave Clawson coaching there. He's one of the best coaches in the country. They'll come to play. Holy Cross picks up a big 38-7 win over Colgate, big Patriot League win. Dan Curran's squad is now 2-4. They got 0-6 Fordham coming to town this week in a winnable game. Holy Cross can get on a little bit of a roll here now. They could still win the Patriot League and end up earning a playoff berth, so they are not out of it by any means. And I know people in Worcester have been used to them in recent years being the top dog in the Patriot League and winning a bunch of games, but you know what? They're starting to come around. They've had some injuries. They've lost Jordan Fuller for the year. They've had some big names that they've had to replace, but you're starting to see that they're taking to Dan Curran's coaching and his style of play.
Yeah, I think it was just unfortunate for how strong their schedule was to start the year. Like we talked about, as exciting as it was also like, damn, a new head coach to be playing all these great teams, UNH, Harvard to, Yale right out the gate is a really hard way to start the season. So, but Joe Pazansky with a great game, and I think he's kind of been carrying them with the absence of Fuller. And, Colgate was supposed to be one of the decent teams in the, Patriot League this year, but hasn't been. But they took care of business. And like you said, I still think that they are well within striking range with Fordham being as down as they are, to much everyone's surprise, too. Yeah. Like, to me, if you're Holy Cross, you're like, no, we can do this. Just don't trip up.
And Fordham has been a team that's been a thorn in their side. Of course, you remember the last time they were in Worcester, they had that epic 52-51 game that Holy Cross ended up winning in overtime. So, they're 0-6, but they've been a program that up until this year has been pretty good in recent years. Boston College. I mean, it's amazing how all of a sudden you got all these knee scrapers now getting off the bandwagon. And they lose one game. It is amazing. Some fan bases amaze me. And they lose 24-14 to Virginia. They come back to earth. I'm not surprised. And this is not a knock on Boston College. They were 4-1, but they should have lost to Western Kentucky. Western Kentucky outplayed them for 3 quarters. That Michigan State win now, Ryan, isn't that big of a deal anymore because they're not very good.
No.
And Florida State's not very good. So then you ask yourself, okay, then they beat Duquesne. Who have they beaten of substance? I mean, you beat a down Florida State team who's bad, a mid-Michigan State team. I mean, you beat Duquesne. It's not, as far as I'm concerned, and then you beat Western Kentucky by 1 point, and again, you probably should have lost. So to me, I'm not surprised they lost to Virginia. Tony Elliott's done a nice job resuscitating that program, getting it back on track. But Boston College's problems, man. Thomas Castellanos, if they fall behind, they can't play from behind because their passing game becomes null and void. They can't establish a physical presence up front running the ball, then they struggle to consistently move the ball. And their defense, which while they can rush the passer, which is not a surprise with the Tim Lewis defense, they've had some coverage issues. They've also had some injuries on the back end. So all of a sudden now they're going into a bye this week, but there's a lot of BC fans are like, see, I knew it. 2 weeks ago, Bill O'Brien was building a monster. Now, they'll be lucky to go 6-6, 7-5.
Yeah, I think it sucks because it's kind of like almost PTSD from the last like 10, 15 years, right? Where you just like, oh man, we're working our way there, then we're not. But I think there's also an overlooking of Virginia because Virginia has really struggled the past few years, especially last season. So I think there was maybe this thought of, oh, well, it's Virginia, they stink, right? But they've had a much better start this year, right? And it's a home game, and especially after getting Castellanos back. And I'm not surprised that it was a loss. I think it's just the nature of it, right? A 10-point loss. You were leading at halftime. The incredibly ridiculous, turnover from Castellanos, 2 from him too. That's what I think if you're a BC fan, you can be upset about. Losing, if it was like 24-21 in a close game throughout, I think you could be like, all right, well, they're still building, right? But I think in this fashion is a little bit to take the shine off. But they still are working towards something. It still is better than it has been. People need to chill out a little bit. But the whole ACC championship thing probably off the table.
Yeah, and look, when you look at their schedule 3 weeks ago, and admittedly, we were guilty of this, not so much me and you. I was starting to take the bait. Stone always takes the bait. I mean, every year he's the easiest fish to catch. But it's one of those things where you look at their schedule now, all of a sudden, you still got to play Syracuse at home. You still got to play Pitt at home. Both of those schools have been pretty good so far. You still got to play Louisville at home on a Friday night later on this month. They're Louisville. They have athletes. They're more than capable of coming up here and winning. And then you got to go to SMU. I mean, those games, those are toss-ups.
Yeah.
Those are toss-ups. And you got to go to Virginia Tech on a Thursday night. That's your next game. You got to go to Blacksburg on a Thursday night, which I don't care what Virginia Tech is doing. It's still a tough game. It's not an easy place to play. So, look, do I see them going 6-6 again? I would hope not. I mean, I'm holding out hope now that they still find a way to win 7 or 8 games and end up in a quality bowl, maybe something like the Pinstripe Bowl. But everything they want to accomplish is technically still in front of them, but they have to play much better. And of course, after the game, we saw the teapot side of Bill O'Brien. That's why he had that nickname with the Patriots. He was not happy. And that's when you don't get in his way. Stay out of his way. Say less, as the kids would like to say today, and keep it simple. And a couple of reporters that were on that call, they found out the hard way. So Kevin was smart enough to ask a quick question and get the hell out of Dodge. The rest of them, they learned a valuable lesson. All right, alma mater. Played hard against Northern Illinois. Of course, we talked about them hosting Missouri this weekend. Thoughts on their 35-20 loss. They were right there with them. And then that darn fourth quarter reared its ugly head where they gave up 21 points. And like I said, they lost 34-20.
It's funny if you're watching the stream, like I'm smiling talking about everything else, then you say alma mater, my face goes, back to neutral. I think what sucks is that they've been so good against the run, and then they just were gashed on Saturday, right? They did a great job against Ethan Hampton, but granted, he wasn't anything special coming into the game, right? It's nice to see CJ Hester run the ball pretty well. Maybe he's going to be the guy because he had a nice week the game beforehand. But, I mean, the only other guys getting carries are Cookie Desiderio, Demarion Albrick. Where's Brandon Campbell? Where is the other guy, Jalen John. There we go. Where are these guys? I don't know if they're hurt or what, right? So it's just it's another tough one, right? Because they're leading at halftime. They were tied going into the fourth quarter, then 21 points in the fourth quarter. That's just what's so tough. And that's just what, again, week after week, we sit here and say the same thing, that it's kind of like you go up to, you're looking at the dollar menu and you're really hungry and you're like, all right, which one of these things is it going to be this week, right? Like, I've got $1 in my pocket. Is it going to be the crushing loss, the loss in the fourth quarter, the blowout? What is it going to be, right? And I think that's just what is so frustrating about it, is the inconsistency, right? Great against a run, terrible last Saturday, right? So that's what's hard.
It is, and they have a tall task on hand this week when Missouri comes down, which we're going to start by previewing that game first. But before we do, you are watching the College Football Preview Show presented by Yolked. I'm your host, John Sarianides. Yolked, of course, is our proud sponsor. Visit yolked.com today for some of the best protein products on the market. If you're looking for a safe, effective protein powder that you can take prior to your workout, well, then Yolked is the product for you. And only 47 calories per packet. Tastes like birthday cake. It's actually safe for you. It is actual egg yolk, and it's a product that will help you enhance your workouts. It's safe for young athletes, older athletes, and those that are just looking to get in shape. Again, visit yolk.com today for more information, and you can purchase the product directly on the website. And if you're looking to purchase a product for your teams, there's discount codes on there. You can get a discount if you purchase a certain number of boxes for your program. So again, visit yolk.com today for more information. I may not be the sveltest guy in the world, but I have used it. I love the product. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. All right, let's preview the games now that we have established that I'm fat. So
I don't agree. I'm looking through the camera, so I'm no.
Well,
I'm no.
Well,
no,
if you're looking through the camera, then you would see how much of the screen my face is taking up. So, all right. In any event, let's go back to the alma mater. As we mentioned, they're hosting Mizzou this weekend at McGuirk. Elijah Drinkwitz, head coach at Missouri, is pretty excited about this matchup, Barry. He's talking about looking forward to getting out here, and that don't let the film fool you. They're a good football team. And look, you could look at that as coach speak, but he's not wrong. I mean, they've had their moments where they played well, and you're going up against Don Brown. I mean, one of the best defensive coaches in college football. Even though his defenses haven't been what he's accustomed to coaching in recent years, the last couple of years, they can still come up with a really good game plan to slow you down and stop your offense, he and Coach Dudzinski. Nonetheless, he's also excited about coming out to McGuirk. We'll see how excited he is after he gets here. All that being said, Missouri is favored by 27.5. The over-under is 54.5. I think we all universally agree Missouri's going to win this game. It's just a matter of how much do they win this game by. Now, we learned – I'll say this. If you remember, 3 years ago, Boston College went out to McGuirk. UMass hung with them for 3 quarters. Could we see something like that here? Could they potentially hang with Missouri for 3 quarters and make this a competitive game?
I do think that the over of 54.5 is going to hit. The problem with Missouri is that they, similar to last year, they play games close against teams that you would not think that they would otherwise, I think, at times. I mean, they did blow out Buffalo this year, but they beat BC by 6. I mean, now that Vanderbilt win is looking a lot better, only winning by 3. But then last week, completely torched at Texas A&M, really, really added character. I think that what is interesting to me, Brady Cook is solid, but I don't think that he's some out of this world playmaker who's going to win you the national championship, but against UMass, I think that maybe this could be his game. I do think the over is going to hit. I think it's going to be, I would take the under in the spread going into halftime, but I do think that it'll eventually get away from them and they'll kind of take it. What I worry about is after losing so badly to Texas A&M last week, I think they're going to potentially take this out on UMass. I think some of them might be pissed they have to come up here, right, for a non-con game. And
right.
So right. I part of me thinks they're going to take it out on that in frustration. But I wish deep down that, it's a new, interesting place. I don't know. You guys play at the same place all the time, these big Power 5 schools. Come to these smaller schools and see real college football.
I do think you're going to see more of this in the coming years.
I hope so, because they can
have been the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, because you can afford to lose these games now with an expanded playoff. So I don't know. I just think it's better for the game when you see bigger schools come to smaller schools. They shouldn't be afraid of it. If you're the better team, then you win. If you're worried about losing, then you're not a serious program, right? So
I don't think right, and I think if you're Missouri, I mean, you're the better team. You know that as long as you don't turn the ball over, you execute. You play fundamentally sound, you're going to win. It's a money game for UMass. I think it caught a lot of people's attention that they were willing to come out here and play it. As I mentioned, I do think you're seeing more and more schools show a willingness to play at group of 5 schools. It used to be the other way around. You go down, take your beating, take your paycheck, and go home. I think times have changed now. You're seeing more and more bigger programs show willingness to visit the smaller schools and play on their campus. And I think, look, you could still pay to win. And as we've seen at times, that doesn't always pan out, but you could pay to win. But the other thing is, you also help the local economy. I mean, this is good for Amherst. I mean, it should be a good weekend for Amherst financially, for the town of Amherst. So,
yeah, I don't think you're going to see as big a crowd as you have probably since that BC game, and then before that, probably the first game back on campus when they returned after being at Gillette full time. So, yeah, obviously, I think pretty easy to say that we're both taking Mizzou, but I hope that with the season it's been that they come out and show a little bit of resiliency. I'm hoping they don't roll over immediately, but I think what sucks is knowing that they should have been at least 3-2 coming into this game, and they're not, and that's just what's the most frustrating thing. So
yeah. We're both. So here's the thing: I'm taking Missouri to win.
Yeah,
but I'm tempted to take UMass here under 27.5. I mean, it's probably not the best move, but I'm almost tempted to say, you know what? I think Missouri wins, but I don't see them winning by 4 scores. I see them winning by 3 scores. I think UMass can play them tough, but ultimately they pull away. So I'm picking Missouri to win by 3 scores. But if I'm putting money on this one, I'm taking UMass with the 27.5. There's the dog. I just think it makes, I think it makes sense. I think they're going to come to play. I think that they're going to want to compete and give themselves a chance to potentially pull off the upset. And I think they will compete for at least a half anyway. All right, Boston College is idle this week, as is UConn. So that, in essence, takes care of the FBS portion of the show. Next up, we're going to go over to the CAA. UNH is visiting Elon. Elon is 1-4 in the season. Of course, the Wildcats are going to look to get back on track. I think it's one of those games where if you're UNH, it's all about getting off to a fast start and taking care of business early. I think the big thing here is they got to get their running game going. You said this earlier. The line on this one is UNH is favored by 7.5. Do the Wildcats cover here?
Yeah, I would say so. I think if I was actually betting, I would probably tease it to maybe 6.5. Give myself a little bit of space there, just because Elon's been losing a lot of games by at least the score. But I think that UNH definitely gets the job done. It's just they need to run the ball better. I think they're going to throw and they're going to be okay. It's their defense has been mightily improved, which is exciting to see. Elon's got a couple guys that can run the ball, so UNH is gonna have to step it up defensively there after last week, especially. So, but I'm taking the Wildcats.
Yeah, I'm taking them here too. I think they do bounce back. This is a 31-21 kind of game, but I think that they do bounce back offensively. I expect a big day for Seth Morgan, Tomlinson, Burke, that passing game. And I think their defense bounces back and plays better, which I think that's the big thing for UNH moving forward. They need their defense to get back on track after that tough loss to Harvard last week. All right, next up we have the Governor's game. We have Brown at URI in what is always a really good matchup here. Of course, the winner wins the Governor's Cup. Long-time rivals have been playing this game for a long time. URI's owned the rivalry of late, but this Brown team is much improved. Program is much improved. URI is favored in this one by 3.5. I think this is going to be a terrific game. Our Charlie Adams is going to be there on Saturday for that one. I think it's going to be a terrific game because I think these are two pretty closely matched teams that I think are going to be able to slow this thing down. I don't think it's going to be your typical Brown game where they're airing it out and throwing it all over the place and scoring a bunch of points. But I think Brown is good enough defensively now. It's a shame they don't have Isaiah Reed, but I think they're good enough defensively now that they could go down there and potentially steal this one. This one's close to me. I'm going to go URI to cover here. I think that they win by, we'll say by a field goal to 7 points. That half a point is tough, but I think this is going to be a pretty good game. And if you told me Brown won on Saturday night, I wouldn't bat an eyelash.
Same. I'm going to take the Rams, but I think it's going to be I really don't know because I was so confident in Brown last weekend, and for them to lose. So I'm feeling that way about URI, but I just like the way they're throwing the ball, and I think that that's what's important, especially with how Bryant did that so well against Brown last week, and how Harvard was able to move the ball well last week. 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to take the Rams just because I do think that the URI offense is solid and will take care of business that way. And it's just overall the better offense.
It's just that half a point that scares me because I can honestly, I mean, again, we're making this up, so I'm being a little dramatic here with the scares me thing, but I can see this being a field goal game. I really think that this is as close as these two teams have been in a long time, talent-wise. This game means the world to both programs. It's a rivalry game. Of course, both coaches spoke today at the State House in their annual press conference before the game. I think that this could go either way. I think it's a swing game. Maine travels down to Delaware. They are 10.5-point dogs here. Of course, Black Bears are 3-2 on the season, coming off a bye. Playing pretty well. Defense has played pretty well the last couple of weeks. Offense has started to get going. Carter Peavy has settled in at quarterback. We know how good the skill group is. The running game is starting to get going here. Can Maine go down to Delaware and upset the Blue Hens?
I really wish this wasn't who they were playing after their bye. I'm going to go with the Blue Hens just because of the juggernaut they are this year. But it'd be great if the Black Bears can keep it closer, right? It's kind of like the Montana State game, right? Can you just not get blown out? Can you keep it close in the first half, even if they pull away in the second half? Just keep it close, and that's kind of I feel like what they're going for this weekend. But I'm definitely going with Delaware.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Delaware too. And like I said, I think the 10.5 points, that's a big number. But I think at the end of the day, they're just a better football team. I think they probably win this game by 2 or 3 scores. But if you're Maine, it's been a good season so far. The only thing you don't want here is you want to win the game and pull off the upset. But the same token, if you don't get the win, you want to be competitive. And you don't want to lose any of that momentum that you had going into the bye. You want to carry that momentum over to the rest of your season. So obviously we're rooting for Maine and we want them to pull off the upset. But you also, like I said, you don't want to lose any momentum as you go into the back half of the season here. Bryant coming off the big win over Brown. They host Albany on Saturday. Our Adam Kirkchin is going to be there for that one. I know he's pretty fired up to be covering some college football for us. Bryant is favored by 2.5 here. Albany, of course, lost to Maine a couple of weeks ago. They're off to a 1-3 start. Big game for Bryant. You win this one, you're back to 500, and all of a sudden, everybody's really feeling good about themselves now.
Yeah, this is a tough one. I'm torn on this just because I want to support the local guys, and but I'm actually going to go with the Great Danes here, just because I think that for as tough as that Maine game was, to beat a good Cornell team last week, I think showed me that they're kind of getting back on the right track because they're usually a good team. They've had a couple injuries they've had to deal with, so I'm going to go with Albany here just because I think that. Just overall, they're a bit more. They're a bit deeper right now, and I worry a little bit too in some ways about Bryant having a letdown after the big Brown win, similar to Brown had with Harvard. So that's the only reason why I'm going to buck against the trend here and go with the Great Danes.
Yeah, I'm going to be a total homer here. I'm not going against Jared Guest and Landon Ruggieri after what I saw last week. Those are two bad dudes, and I think this Bryant passing game is a handful. I think they're gonna be able to throw on anybody they play against the rest of the way. And when you have, Guest has been so impressive, the Coastal Carolina transfer. And that offense, man, Chris Merritt, hat tip to him. He's a terrific coach, terrific offensive coach. He really runs a system that's quarterback friendly. We've seen it the last couple of years with Zevi Eckhouse before this season. I just think, to me, it's hard to pick against this Bryant team for me right now, just because I see them rolling along here. A big part of success in football is confidence, and I think this is a program that's starting to feel good about themselves. As Merritt said last week, they're not playing against each other anymore. They're playing against their opponents now, which I think is a big part of it for them. All right, I'm going to move over to the Patriot League. As we mentioned earlier, Holy Cross is hosting winless Fordham. Crusaders are favored in this one by 10.5, and I think Dan Curran's squad makes it 2 in a row with a big win over the Rams. You mentioned Joe Pasansky. He's starting to heat up. You got Jaden Clervaux at running back. He's going to start getting going, filling the big shoes, of course, of Jordan Fuller. But you got Shorter. You got a dynamic skill group on the perimeter. Passing game is pretty good. I think the Crusaders cruise here and pick up a big win. I see them covering that number easy.
Yeah, agreed. I'm going to take the Crusaders here. The only thing that worries me is that, is Fordham maybe starting to kind of put the wheels back on. They only lost by 5 last week to Lafayette, who's probably the only real contender that Holy Cross is working with this year in the Patriot League. But I'm definitely going to go with Holy Cross. Just because I like where they're building. I think Dan Curran's kind of got them motivated, and they're shaking the cobwebs off, or they're shaking the dust off of that tough first start to the season.
They do still have to play Harvard, so but it'll be good to go into that game with some momentum if they can take care of business the way they have here. All right, we're going to shift gears here now and talk some Ivy League football. We're going to start with Harvard, the aforementioned Harvard Crimson. They traveled to Cornell on Saturday. Cornell is 1-2, but Cornell's lone win this season was Yale 2 weeks ago. And Cornell has given Harvard problems in recent years. Jamison Wang, of course, at quarterback, one of the best signal callers in the Ivy League. Harvard is favored in this one by 6.5, but this Cornell team has been pesky the last few years. They're tough to beat. The big boys in the Ivy League have had a hard time with them. I like Harvard here. I think they cover that number. I think they win by 7 to 10 points. I think they're back. I think they've shaken off, like Taylor Swift, they've shaken off that that Brown loss. Who knew Bill Belichick was a Taylor Swift fan, by the way? That's kind of disappointing. I don't think he is. I think he's just trying to placate the new girlfriend.
Yeah, that's got.
There's no way on earth Belichick is driving his Lexus around Hingham listening to, Taylor Swift. I mean, knock it off. That's
got. Please still like me all over.
Right. Yeah. I when I saw that picture of the two of them, cute pic, great. Guy in his 70s dating a girl in her 20s, but don't give me this bullshit that you're a Taylor Swift fan. I don't buy it. Knock it off. Anyway, I'm going Harvard here. I think they cover, win by 7 or 10.
Yeah, I agree. I'm definitely going with Harvard. I think that it was very impressive what they did last week. I'm interested to see if Jamison Wang kind of figures it out. He had a down week last week against Albany. Maybe he'll do a little bit better because obviously Seth Morgan still had a pretty good game against Harvard. So I worry a little bit about the passing game, but overall I think that they'll get the job done.
All right, next up, we're going to go down to New Haven. Armand Kidway is going to be there for this one. Dartmouth, 3-0, visiting Yale. Bulldogs are 2-1. Bulldogs are young, but they've started to get that running game going. You mentioned Joshua Pitzenberger had a good game last week. Survive against Central Connecticut State. I warned people early, you need to start buying stock in this Dartmouth team. I think they're legit. I think they're going to be in the mix to win it again. They bring back a lot of experience, especially on offense. They're favored in this one by 2.5, and I'm going to go with the Big Green and go on the road. I think the world of Coach Reno, and if he ever sees this, he's going to probably, put me on his naughty list here, but I'm going Dartmouth here. I think, they know how to win close games. We've seen it from them the last couple of years. We saw it from them last week, beating a good Penn team 20-17. I think it's going to be that kind of game again. But I think this Dartmouth team with Jackson Proctor and Q Jones, Paxton Scott, they find a way to score enough points to win in their defense, which is unheralded. They'll come up with some key stops down the stretch, and I think that their experience is the difference here in a win over Yale.
Yeah, and I think that I'm going to go with the Big Green as well, though I do feel this is like an Ivy League type game where it's just going to I feel like very rarely do you just see teams run away with it. So that's what I'm almost having a hard time seeing Dartmouth start 4-0, 2-0 conference play. But I'm taking them just because of how good their run defense is and how they've done such a great job against that so far this year, right? So I'm going to go with the Big Green.
Yeah, I just think it's going to be a close game, but I think their experience, I think, is the difference here, in my opinion, anyway. I think that proves to be the difference. Of course, we already talked about Brown and Rhode Island. They've got a big matchup on Saturday in the Governor's Cup. And as I mentioned earlier, Boston College and UConn are off this week. Next up, we're going to take a look at Merrimack and Sacred Heart. Both of them are playing this week. Of course, Sacred Heart is down in Howard, beat Norfolk State last week 10-6 in a typical Sacred Heart game, kind of a slog. They went back and forth. Sacred Heart was able to run the football, leaned on their defense, survived. Defense got back on track, which is good because, as we always say with the Pioneers, that's a big part of what they do. But they got a tough matchup this week down at Howard against an athletic team, a skilled team that could pose some problems. Howard is favored in this one. Again, these are mythical lines, so don't go looking for them. If you do, you're a degenerate gambler. But in any event, Howard is favored in this one, despite their 2-3 record. They're favored in this one by 3.5.
Yeah, I'm gonna take the Bison. Then again, I mean, Sacred Heart could win this 13-6 or 10.
That's a typical Mark Knopfler type game. He would prefer that. Lean on your defense and running game and get the hell out of there with the dub.
Yeah, it's hard to say, because it's not like Howard has some explosive offense, but they've hit 30 a couple times, but only against teams that are Morehouse, Mercyhurst, who are I don't even know if Morehouse even is D1, but Mercyhurst just making that jump, right? But had a hard time against Princeton last week. But I'm going to go with Howard just because I think they're a little bit more well-rounded and the fact that it is home down there. But this would be a huge win, in my opinion, for Sacred Heart if they could get it done. But I'm going to go with Howard.
I'm going to go with Howard too, but I would love to see the Pioneers win this game because all of a sudden you improved to 4-3. It's a good turnaround year. This program needed it. It's been a tough 2-year stretch down there. We've been saying that all season for this program. I would love to see them go down there and get the win. I think it's going to be tough. Again, like I said, this Howard team is going to present some matchup problems from a skill standpoint. Going with Howard there as well. Merrimack travels down to Morgan State. Of course, the Warriors were idle last week. Morgan State is 2-3. Merrimack has played a bear of a schedule. I mean, Air Force, UConn, Maine, Dartmouth. I mean, they finally get a reprieve here, and they start playing some teams. They did beat Bucknell earlier this year, but they're starting to play some teams now that they match up pretty well with. If you can come out of that slate healthy, and this Merrimack team is talented, if you can come out of that slate healthy, and they appear to be relatively healthy, they should go down there and take care of business. Morgan State is favored by 1.5, but I'm taking the Warriors here. I think Jermaine Corbett has been terrific, the Stonehill transfer. They obviously have had some quarterback issues. It's been a revolving door there. They got to get those figured out. But you got Donovan Wadley. You got a good skill group. The defense is good as always. Warriors should take care of business here and pick up their second win.
Yeah, agreed. I'm going to go with the Warriors. I look at what Morgan State's body of work has been this year, and two of their best wins are against schools that are not in Division I, right? Although they've kept some games closer than I thought. Towson, Ohio, Stony Brook, but I like the Warriors coming off a bye week, and hopefully they've got their quarterback room kind of all set. No matter who they're going to go with there, should be Aiden Pereira, but I like Merrimack this week off a bye.
Yeah. All right, next up we have Mercyhurst visiting CCSU. Of course, CCSU coming off a tough 1-point loss to Yale last week. Blue Devils are 2-3, but they've played a really good schedule, and they've been competitive in that schedule. Mercyhurst, as you mentioned, first year in D1. The Blue Devils are favored here by 7.5, and I think they cover that number easy. I think they're going to get off to a fast start. Brady Olson, Elijah Howard. I think they're going to run the football. I think they're going to play action, make some big plays down the field. Their defense has been able to generate turnovers. They've played well. I think they should take care of business here and stay in that hunt to win the NEC.
Yeah, this would really suck for them, I think, if they lost just based off what they've done so far. But I'm definitely taking the Blue Devils here. I think this is a game where they kind of, I don't know if they throttle them, but I think that they definitely cover that line and show that what they've done so far is legitimate. So definitely give me the Blue Devils.
And the NEC is wide open, by the way. I mean, Right now Duquesne is 3-2, but Wagner's 3-3, and they're coming off a win over Stonehill. And congratulations to one of my former players, Derek Getchell, who's the D coordinator at Wagner. Held them to 7 points. There you go, Getch. And of course, he watches the show, so he saw that I picked Stonehill last week. So, like any good former player, and I will be calling you back, by the way. I'm not avoiding you. Like any good former player, he called his old coach to rub it in his face. Thanks for picking against us. By the way, this week I'm picking Columbia, Getch. So strap in. You're in for a long afternoon, my friend. No, I'm kidding. We're not gonna talk about that game, but good luck against Columbia. But in any event, Central Connecticut State does have a shot here. They win this one. You're 3-3. Wagner's 3-3. If they beat Columbia, you can make the argument could be in the driver's seat. Duquesne's going to be in the mix. St. Francis will find a way to be in the mix. So we'll see there. Stonehill travels to Long Island. Long Island 0-6 on the season. Skyhawks are 1-3, looking to bounce back after that tough loss to Wagner. They're favored in this one by 1.5. Long Island, despite their record, has played teams tough, though. They went toe-to-toe with URI down there a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and because of that, I just can't figure out this Stonehill team. They haven't gotten any momentum. They're not what they haven't shown any growth like they had from last season. So I'm actually going to go with Long Island here. This might be kind of the most winnable game on their schedule, right? I think the rest of the year for them, Robert Morris was standing. So give me Long Island, which I never thought I'd pick over any New England school, but I just think that they have had some close games this season, so I'm going to take them.
I'm going to go with the Skyhawks, and I know that I got burned last week, but I think that they go down there and get it done. That running game, that's the key for Stonehill. And when you had Jermaine Corbett the last couple of years, he was the straw that stirred the drink. I think that they could still have that with Xavier Woodward and Jarrell Washington. Get those guys going early. If they can establish that running game, that allows them now to open up the passing game. And you got Asher Karaha, who has a dual threat element to his game. Cody Ruff at tight end. They've got some pieces there where they could score points, but they got to get this offense going. They're young at wide receiver. It's kind of been their bugaboo thus far this season. They're not getting enough production from the receiver position, but if they can get those guys going, they've got the pieces in the backfield and a tight end to score points and give defenses problems. All right, did we forget anybody, or did we get them all?
I think we've got everybody.
All right. Final thoughts here, Barry, before we wrap it up.
Kind of a slower week, I think, with obviously two big buys in BC and UConn. I think it's a great weekend. I love that, the Football Journal team is spread so far out, and we're going to be covering a lot of great games. Probably won't be the best one in Amherst, but it's quote unquote the biggest, right? So whenever an SEC team comes this way, it's a big deal. So that's exciting. But other than that, I'm just excited for another great weekend, especially a long weekend, Drake May weekend. It's a lot to look forward to. So, yeah.
That's right. It is a big weekend. May Day is upon us. I mean, look.
That's right.
I mean, I just want the kid to play well. I want him to stay healthy. I want him to develop. It's not about them winning anything this year. This is a bridge year for them. I've said it from the beginning. I've reiterated it throughout the season. Just want the kid to stay healthy and play well and develop. And I don't care what Caleb Williams is doing. I don't care what Jaden Daniels is doing or Bo Nix or what Spencer Rattler is going to do this weekend. I know a lot of Patriot fans are fixated on those guys and they want Drake May to be as good as those guys have been so far. Drake May doesn't have the pieces around him that those guys have. I mean, realistically speaking, right? Like Caleb Williams walked into an unreal situation for a rookie quarterback. I mean, that's one of the best skill groups in the league, regardless of who the quarterback is. And then you look at Jaden Daniels, he has Terry McLaurin. The Patriots don't have anybody that resembles Terry McLaurin. And even Bo Nix, man. I mean, you have Cortland Sutton, you have Troy Franklin. That's a decent receiver crew. They got a decent little backfield there. So, I mean, those guys had some inherited advantages going into their situations. Drake's going to be a little bit behind the eight ball, but he has enough talent around him that if they coach him up and he takes care of the football, plays within the structure of the offense, he'll be fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm going to be there. My friend asked me to go to the game. I know you guys are always there, but I don't know if it's a good thing because I was at Mac Jones' debut game too. So I hope I'm not like an omen. It's sitting here in 3 years saying the same thing. So I don't know. Some guy who's
they lost to the Dolphins in his first game.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, I don't know, but that's what I'm looking forward to this weekend, of course, and of course of all the great games. But the Governor's Cup in Rhode Island, probably the game of the weekend here in New England.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a fantastic matchup, and like I said, our Charlie Adams is going to be there for that one. Charlie's going to be all over the place for us. I mean, he's covering a game Thursday night, he's covering a game Friday night, he's covering that game on Saturday. He is definitely getting his money's worth, but Charlie's doing a tremendous job, and we appreciate you, bud, as is our whole team. Our whole team is doing an unbelievable job this season, and again, I say it all the time, we'd love to be at more games. We get disappointed when we can't get to more games. So try to stay patient. We're going to try to get to as many games as we can. And as we grow here, we hope that we have the ability to do that in the coming years. But certainly, we're pretty fortunate to have you and the rest of the team. I mean, you make us look good, because without you guys, there is no New England Football Journal. So thanks a lot, Ryan. Great job as always. Looking forward to your coverage this Saturday from Amherst, and hopefully the alma mater plays tough, plays competitive. It would be unreal if they pulled off the upset, but I just want them to play well and play competitive and give us something to cheer.
Yeah, if they win, I'm gonna retire. I'm gonna say it right now. Just
you wait until after the season, because I don't have anybody to replace you.
Yeah, I'll never. Nothing will ever top it. Nothing. Literally, nothing.
I know, and I know you'll be in that euphoric state, and I don't blame you. You may even grab a 6-pack and drink it all the way back home, but don't do that.
Okay.
But don't retire either, because we need you. I mean, we're without you. You're too important to the operation. You can't retire.
Okay.
All right, Ryan. Great stuff as always, man. We'll talk to you next week.
You as well. Thank you.
All right, that'll do it for the College Football Preview Show. For Ryan Barry, I'm John Serenitas. Till next week. Peace.